Earlier today, I put out a very controversial theory. I made the claim that Peely is actually the nothing. Now, let me tell you how this theory came about. Yesterday, when a lot of y'all had left stream, I had 3 people in chat start making a couple of jokes, right? It was Gail, Patrius, and I believe Aaron. Everybody, so we were sitting down. I was talking about how it's weird how there's all these like evil Peely plushies all around the map, right? And I think it was either Patrius or Aaron. They made the joke like, yeah, it's it's like kind of like Peely was always watching us. It's kind of like in the Season X trailer where he did the I'm watching you thing to Jonesy. He's probably a member of the last reality. And I was like, yeah. Like, wouldn't it be crazy if Peely was the nothing? Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. Wait. It turned into a whole thing. So what I'm getting at is my community, because you guys keep me unhinged, number one. But number two, the more we talked about it, some of the pieces of the puzzle actually made sense. Now, I'm not going to say this is a perfect theory, okay? There are some chinks in the armor. Alps brought up a very interesting point earlier, which we're going to cover in a little bit. But I think if you really sit back, look at it from a distance, squint just a little bit, it kind of works. This is kind of how it goes. Let's start with Chapter 7, where we're at right now, right? One of the things that I found so weird from day one is, why the hell are there these evil Peely plushies lying around the map, right? And in the back of my mind, I was like, I feel like I've seen these before, but I don't know. Then I think it was Gail that pointed out that the evil Peely plushies have been around before, but Peely has, a lot of Fortnite's history, the Peely plushies have had like kind of an attachment or a tie to the occult in Fortnite. Like there's this weird kind of like Peely cult that has existed in Fortnite for a long time. I don't remember when that started, so somebody in chat is gonna have to remind me of that. My world is dark, filled with emptiness, as I learn that bananas and cats are evil. You'll never eat a banana the same way again, Jay. The evil Peely plushies this chapter are for the movie the Battle Pass character are making called the Peelians. Yeah, see, I would believe that. I would believe that if 1, they didn't exist all the way back since chapter 1, and 2, if they weren't inside of 2 different areas of the map that have nothing to do with the movie sets, right? When you go to the movie sets, what you see is like a lot of those evil bananas with like the giant mouths, like these like mutant alien bananas trying to eat people, which once again, that detail alone isn't enough to kind of raise suspicion, right? It's quirky, but it's like, whatever. The plushies on their own aren't enough to raise suspicion either, but the issue is where the plushies are placed. The one inside the Inner Loops compound, there's like a jail cell / interrogation room, and you've got one plushie that's under a bright light. There's steam all around it, and it looks like they're genuinely doing some investigating, some research on the plushie, right? For whatever reason, and the sucker looks demon possessed, right? Then you've got the other one that's sitting inside of a last reality ship. Now, listen, I don't want to jump the shark, and I don't want to be Mr. Crazy Theory 5 realities guy. I'm just joking. We left Cyan, but I don't want to I don't want to read into stuff too much. However, at the same time, Fortnite is really good. They do a really good job of giving us clues. They're pointing to something, right? There's too much banana themed nonsense going on this chapter. There's too many evil bananas on the island, chat. All right, that's just what it comes down to. But none of this in and of itself is enough to prove that Peely is exactly the nothing. Maybe some kind of connection between him and the last reality. Maybe he was a member of the last reality. Who knows? Now, since we're at this junction, let's bring up a contention that some people say at this point, right? Well, Clark, here's the deal. Well, we know that Peely is actually a snapshot of Jonesy that was altered by, I think, the 0 point or something, right? Because I think it was the World Cup is where everybody's getting that from. Hold on. In the original trailer, what you see is like you see Jonesy. You see like Jonesy. What it appears to be is Jonesy the First. It's a snapshot. It looks like a snapshot of Jonesy, and he gets zapped by a rift energy and gets turned into a banana. So what everybody is saying is that it can't be the nothing, because Jonesy, we know that it was like a Jonesy snapshot that got turned into Peely, right? The weird thing, there's a couple weird things about that though. Number one, the snapshot that they use is Jonesy the First, but Jonesy the First is obviously seen alongside Peely in a lot of the original Chapter 1 trailers, right? So it's like a Jonesy the First snapshot. Like there's multiple snapshots that look like Jonesy the First, allegedly, that they're just wandering around there. But then I started to look at it from a different angle too. If I believe that the Nothing has the ability to inhabit a sentient banana, what's to stop me from thinking that the Nothing couldn't have tried to imitate Jonesy? He couldn't have made some kind of vessel that was originally looked like Jonesy. And as a matter of fact, the more I thought about it, the more that made sense to me, right? It could have been the case that originally the Nothing wanted to look like Jonesy to take his place. Because what better way to take down the imagined order than from the inside and being one of their chief directors? That to me kind of it kind of supported my theory even more. Look at Illuminati chat. Okay, I'll go in there. Let me take a peek at Illuminati chat real quick. So this is the trailer that everybody references. And so that's why everybody thinks that, okay, see, that can't be the Nothing. But I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not it's the Nothing or not. Now, I will say this, okay? The thing about trailers like this that's difficult is that it's like, you could argue that it's canonical. Like, I don't want to say that it's not part of the storyline per se, but at the same time, this was really just something goofy that they put out to promote the world, the World Cup or whatever was going on in Fortnite at that time. I don't think it's worth looking into that much. But once again, there's a logical, even with this, even if we want to accept this trailer as canon, there's a logical explanation to say, hey, there's nothing to make me believe that the Nothing still couldn't have been that Jonesy clone before, and then now he's got turned into a banana. Maybe it's the case that the 0 Point realized that it was a Nothing, and to mess up his plans, he turned him into something so absolutely wacky that there's no way that he could infiltrate the imagined order. But as we found out later, he wouldn't have to. And this is where the second half of the theory kind of comes in. So if I look back, when I started thinking about like Fortnite's past and kind of the biggest things that Peely was involved in, it always seemed to be like the areas where Peely was like always the most prominent, where he had the most significance, was always in some kind of battle against like the imagined order. Now, something that we just talked about in the simulation theory video, if you've watched that one, go back and watch that, and also the time loop theory video, because both of those theories kind of tie into this one. But one of the things that we talked about was how the one thing, there are two things that the last reality had a problem with. It would have been the imagined order, and it would have been the 0 Point. The imagined order controlled the 0 Point. So the two things that gave the last reality the hardest time, those two things were constantly in interference, constantly a thorn in the side of the last reality to further their goals. So the last reality in the simulation that we talked about from the simulation theory, the last reality needed to figure out, they needed to infiltrate, they needed a new puzzle piece or a new pawn to enter into the game to kind of infiltrate the simulation and kind of nudge certain things along. And then when I started looking at Peely's involvement in the story, it really started to point towards him being there at certain pivotal moments that kind of pushed the plot forward in a particular direction. For example, if you look at the collision event, right? This might seem minor, and that's kind of the point of why this theory works in a way, because it's a lot of things that seem so mundane that they feel like they don't really matter. But when you look at the overall big picture, especially with the knowledge that we have now, the last reality kind of controlling things behind the scenes, everything potentially being one big time loop, everything being part of the simulation that they're running, it's kind of interesting how Peely shows up at these moments, like this one.
It's worth a shot. can't believe this is working.
Okay, so why is this important right here, chat? Well, obviously, Peely was the one that drove up the truck full of slurp, right? But this is how I'm looking at this whole thing, especially with the simulation theory and the time loop theory, right? If the last reality had like all these different iterations that they had ran through, right? What if in one of the iterations, the 7 actually lost to the imagined order because they couldn't repair the mech? And so in this new iteration, this new simulation, they know, hey, why don't we have little helpful Peely come along and give him a little bit of slurp to kind of repair the mech, right? Because what does that do? That gets the mech to a position where it will eventually smash Dr. Sloan, pause, right? Which causes Dr. Sloan to be chilling in that tank all the way up until Chapter 4, Season 3, which Dr. Sloan was needed so she could sense that presence that was coming back to the island, so she could send Jonesy back in time to go back to Season OG so he could try to start the black hole event all over again, so the 0 point would be fractured. So our attention would be fractured, right? But that potentially doesn't happen if the mech can't get here. If the mech is defeated at this point in the story, you can't do that. But because of helpful little Peely, now you can. Because the newest iteration, the last iteration, the final iteration for this training sequence of the last reality put this piece of the puzzle together. But let's go back in time even further. This one isn't necessarily as crazy, but I do think it supports the idea that I'm trying to present here. Now, Agent Peely. Why is this important? We have to remember the context of the story at this time. The entire purpose of Fortnite Chapter 2, Season 2 was for Midas to build that device. He was trying to break everyone out of the loop. But in order to do that, Midas needed to have a little army, a little war. He had to start a war with the Imagined Order to cause them a distraction. And once again, it's our good friend Peely here that just so happens to be at the forefront of that conflict alongside Midas. Once again, another pivotal point in the story to where maybe Peely's involvement was so important that if he wasn't there, Midas wouldn't have won. Maybe in, once again, some of the previous iterations, Midas lost. The storm was never pushed back, which means that we never came into contact with Jonesy and the Imagined Order, and it goes on and on and on, right? But the point is, they wouldn't have been as exposed if Midas hadn't have been able to complete his Stormbreaker project. Now, let's go back even further. And this was the one that kind of did it for me, because I had never looked at... Hold on, let me do this. I never looked at this trailer this way before, under this context. This one, I think, is the most important one. So this was right after the volcano event, right? So you got Jonesy, what appears to be Jonesy the First, and Peely in an underground bunker just chilling. Having a good time, playing video games, all that. But oh no, chat! There's no food in the fridge. Oh. Chaos ensues. Fast forward. The future. They'd been down there for some time. I think it was 100 years in universe, if I remember correctly. But... my bad. Jonesy had to drink Peely. Jonesy the First had to drink Peely. Turned him into Bunker Jonesy, right? At the time when this trailer came out, we were all thinking like, Bunker Jonesy went crazy, yada, yada, whatever. But if you know the Fortnite storyline very well, you know what happened after this is Bunker Jonesy started he started drawing this mural on the wall. And what he was drawing out was how the monster and the mech were going to be fighting each other. The thing about this is, though, and the thing that I never asked myself, and I think most of us asked ourselves, is why all of a sudden, after just being a normal snapshot on the Fortnite island? Why was he able to all of a sudden be able to see the future? Just spending time isolated in a bunker doesn't do that to you. So what was the catalyst for that? The only thing I could potentially think about is Peely. Something about him, his properties, gave Jonesy the ability to see the future. But is he the only character in Fortnite that's been able to do that? No. There's been other characters that have been able to see the future or appear into reality or hear voices in their head, whatever. We've had Raz in Chapter 2, Season 6. We've had Dark Jonesy, who Mr. JLY and I had a conversation about this earlier today. Dark Jonesy was another snapshot, clearly last reality leaning, because he had all the cube runes and everything on him. But Dark Jonesy was able to see the future, but had the power stripped away from him. And when we did the quest with Dark Jonesy in Chapter 2, Season 8, I believe, we actually had to give him his power to see the future back. It appears that the last reality took that power away from him. But that was something that Dark Jonesy was intrinsically able to tap into because of his connection to the last reality. Hope is another character that's been able to see the future, but an interesting detail is, for the first time that we've known Hope, she's no longer able to see visions of the future. She's no longer able to express that through her paintings anymore. And it just so happens to coincide with the season where the last reality has become the prominent force inside of the game again. Almost like the nothing is preventing her or blocking her powers from being able to be used. Almost like he was the one who gave her the powers in the first place. Now, let me say this too. I know there's a difference between being able to see the future and seeing visions in your dreams, but they're still very similar concepts. Stellan was another character that was God, I can't talk. Stellan, back in Chapter 4, Season 1, that was another character that I believe the nothing talked to, influenced his dreams, once again to try to get him to build that rift gate that Amy went through, which sent her to the last reality. The point that I'm making at is this: the nothing. But if we take Peely out of it, the nothing throughout all the Fortnite storyline has messed with people's minds for the purpose of furthering his own goals, for furthering the goals of the last reality in the simulation that's created. I find it so weird that Bunker Jonesy, after drinking Peely, was able to get these powers. And if I'm correct, he would have been the first person in the storyline to obtain these abilities. Then if you look at all the other details of Peely helping out throughout the storyline in pivotal ways, to which if he wasn't there or if he didn't make the call that he did, the story would have gone different. Once again, it gets to a point where it starts to feel like he's intentionally being put in place to further the plot along, or to further the story along, or to further this iteration of the simulation along, to where the last reality gets the outcome that they want. This is the basis for my Peely being the nothing theory. Let's throw a couple of wrenches in the system. Number one, something that Alps brought up. The Oracle back in Chapter 5 made the statement that Peely is the linchpin to like all realities, or something along those lines. Someone in chat's gonna have to give me the exact quote. Hope is related to the gods. Everyone that was part of Chapter 5 enemy group was related to the gods. That's fine. I don't think that detail necessarily conflicts with anything that I'm saying here, though. I just kind of assumed that she was related to the power that was inside the box. Well, here's the thing. Let's touch upon that for a second. Hope is related to the gods and the power, and also an extension of the power inside of the box, right? That's true. But chat, don't y'all find it odd that the nitro effect that came as a result of the power that came from Pandora's box, right? Don't y'all find it odd that the red cube also had that same power? That when we had the mini red cube, the mini red cubes on the mini red cube like shadow stones on the island, instead of it turning into God, I can't talk. Instead of it turning you into a ghost like it used to, it instead gave you the nitro effect. There's a connection there between Pandora's box and the cubes. Probably Probably because there's a spirit realm connection, and the spirit realm seems to be the thing that kind of ties a lot of these different aspects of Fortnite together. We know the last reality kind of, I don't know if you would say they necessarily have control over the spirit realm, but they definitely interact with the spirit realm quite a bit, which is why Dark Jonesy, which is why, like, I think Dark Jonesy, I think the demon realm that we experience in Onioshima, as well as Pandora's box being a key to the underworld, I think all of those are different gateways to the spirit realm. My point is, like, all those things are connected. Let's kind of get back on track here. The Oracle talking about Peely being the linchpin to like all realities, kind of propping up all realities. One of the things that I pointed out earlier in the stream was the last reality has had a hand on multiple realities that we've been to throughout the course of this chapter. It's influenced the decisions that have been made in all sorts of different realities. Reality 0 is where we were through chapters 1 through 3. Chapter 4, we were in a completely different reality. That's where we saw Paradigm, where she grabbed the portion of that ice biome and took it to the 0 point for Zero Fusion. Then we went back to Reality 0 during Season OG. Chapter 5, we presume, is also Reality 0. Chapter 6 was a completely new reality. Same thing with Remix. Remix was also a different reality, right? And now in Chapter 7, we're in another new reality. The last reality talked about, like, their experiment operating in a base reality. The issue with that is we don't really know what that means, but regardless of the context of what the base reality is, it's very evident that regardless of what reality that we're in, the last reality seems to have some kind of presence or some kind of effect in every single one of these different realms that we go to. It's not hard for me to believe that if the nothing operates outside of time and space, like he does, and he has the ability to kind of go into time and space if he wants to, right? If he actually is Peely. It doesn't surprise me that, like, you could still argue that the nothing is arguably a linchpin, a source that's kind of a metaphysical source that's kind of holding all of reality together, but it doesn't have the ability to do everything that it wants to reality. Like, it seems to be like the yin to the 0 points yang, right? But one side is trying to get rid of the other one, causing an imbalance to give it complete control. But I would probably argue, my point I'm getting to is this. I would argue that you could argue that nothing is a linchpin of reality because it has access and control over so many aspects of it already, as we've seen throughout the story. Last thing I kind of want to bring up when it comes to this theory. And I want to make this very clear too. I'm not saying that this necessarily 100% has to be the case. I think it's a fun theory. I think it's goofy to think about. I'm pretty sure that you guys will come up with some other stuff to support or try to deny or to counter this theory. If this was a plot point that was going to be properly fleshed out, it would make a lot of sense within the Fortnite narrative. Like, imagine that you're the big bad of Fortnite, the big enemy that we've been all avoiding this entire time. The big scary monster has been this little banana that's been operating in the trenches with us the entire time. It's the ultimate Trojan horse. It would be the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate backstab, but also the most hilarious plot twist in Fortnite history. I think it's on brand. And I could absolutely see them doing something with it, bro. But like I said, I could be totally off. I need to do more research about the Peely plushies and the occult. Gail, please do and get back to me on that, bro. Start looking at the storyline through that lens. Doesn't mean that it's true. Doesn't mean the theory is accurate, right? I have my doubts with it too. But there might be something there the more we get into it.